let's launch right into the freebie, Gothic lettering, the letter B. I have here my guide sheet that I've made for myself. You can make one just like that. I'm drawing on graphics paper that's translucent so I can see through it. To start the B, we go up near the top of the top line. This is the uppercase B, of course. Near the top, a little curve that hits the top, then comes back down, then goes back up to the top. This curve is one that you're going to see if you're doing this alphabet with us, that you're going to see on about 75% of the letters start with that mark right there. And the next stroke is connecting to that one, come down, and then a vertical stroke. And for me, that is one of the challenges. I practice all of my letters often without any guide sheet because I want to find out where my weaknesses are. I want to find out what my tendencies are. And I've learned that my tendency is, in fact, to do slant to the left and do a counter italics, the opposite of an italics. So knowing that, it helps me to compensate and try to avoid that. The next stroke we're going to be doing is very important. They're all important, but the placement, the distance from the first stroke. And here's what I'm going to tell you to do. You start at the top, the header, the top line now, and you come down, and you want to make this second stroke. The question is, if this were a pen, right, this would be blacked in. The question is, how close, what's the distance between those two strokes? Got it? What's the distance? And the answer is a little bit more than half the pen width. In other words, I want this white line between these two black lines to be skinnier than the black lines. Does that make sense? And that's very important. It's very easy for you to develop too much white space in there, and then it starts looking like wobbly Gothic. And believe me, we don't want wobbly Gothic. So closer, maybe just over half a pen width. And then the next stroke comes down and basically runs parallel to the first one, but stops right about there. Now I'm going to go back straight down from there to the baseline, and I'm going to do another curve. This is one, not an S curve, but one curve with a bit of a foot on it. And I like to make these two connect right there, okay? So these two connect at the top. These two connect at the bottom. Does that make sense? So I have a connector there and a connector there, but not vice versa. Then back to the top of the letter, we're doing one simple curve, almost straight out, then back at an angle. Now, you probably know this already, but we're holding our pen at about a 3.3, just a little bit past 3.4 degree angle. That's better than, I think, than giving you a number like 42 degrees, because who knows what 42 degrees means. The next stroke then starts right there and does another curve, one fairly long curve, and then comes back and meets that first curve right there. Now, it turns out my first curve was a little bit short, and that's why we do this in pencil, so we can find out where our mistakes are. I want it to come out a little bit further. Now we have one more stroke to go on this well, three more strokes, three more strokes. Ignore the man behind the curtain. We're going to hold our pen now at a number 1 angle. That means basically vertical. And we're going to make a straight line as thin as your drawing utensil, your pen, as thin as your pen will allow you to draw. I'm calling that the stroke. And then I went, oh wait, we've got those two hooks that we end, this ubiquitous hook that appears on every single capital letter. There are 2 of them on the letter B and almost all the other letters, and they go like this. Okay, couple things about that. How far apart are they? And I say they're about 1 pen width apart from each other. Okay, I want to make sure that you're careful not to go like this. In other words, your first movement should not be at an angle. Your first movement should be straight out to the left, and then they curve down. That's, I think, the shape that those should be. They should not be like this. Do you see the difference? Those are too short. That angle is not right. It starts out at a 90-degree angle and then curves down with about 1 gap in between. Whew, that's a complete letter B. Now let me do a B again, this time without quite so much talking. You ready? Here we go. SCurve, top of the line, pick up your pen, now down and straight, now about 2/3 of the way to the bottom, back to the top, second stroke, close to the first, and coming down a little bit further so that it intersects this straight curve. That is, as opposed to an S-curve, this is a straight curve, like that, and you can put a little foot on it if you want. Back to the top, curve number 1. Now this angle right here is determined by the angle of your pen, which is at about a 3 1/4, 3 1/2, something like that. And then the second stroke is another curve, comes all the way down and neatly meets that one. Did it. Then I hold my pen at a number 1 angle, perfectly vertical, straight up and down, making just as thin a line as you can possibly make with that tool. And then these two little hooks, which are, the two of them are centered on this staff right here. There's one, and about a pen width in between them. There's two, and there's a pretty good capital B. Now let's do it with a pen, shall we? There's so much information in each Gothic letter that is important. Let's do a pen, S-curve, top, pick up, vertical, about 1/3 of the way down, little hook there, back to the top, close to the first stroke, about half a pen width in distance from the first one. Then here's a straight curve, as opposed to a S-curve, that's what I call a straight curve. Back to the top, curve, straight down, and curve that comes and neatly meets the toe of the first one. Now, I hold my pen at a number 1 angle, just like this, and draw a straight line. How close is it? Quite close. You don't want it getting too far away, or you get a wobbly letter. You don't want a wobbly looking Gothic letter. And then these two hooks. And I'm drawing them the opposite direction this time. In other words, I'm going this way instead of this way. Got it? This is drawing, this is pushing, pulling the pen, pushing the pen, and most of the time you want to pull the pen whenever you can. That's the letter B. Now, let's talk about lowercase letters, shall we? The lowercase are much simpler than the caps. Thank goodness. Here's my guide sheet for the lowercase b. Again, about up there, about half the width of an X height, half the height of an X height. I start holding my pencil at the traditional, for Gothic, traditional angle, just a little past the 3. Start there, come down to the header, and then straight down, not all the way to the baseline, because we have to add this. And I like, in a B, I like this stroke here to be a curve. You could do it straight, but I like the curve a little bit better. Now back up here, about 2/3 of the way up to the header, holding my pen at the same angle, up to the top of the header, angle, vertical, and then this stroke. So if you'll notice, I'm going to put a little flag on it. There we go. All of the thin lines are parallel to each other. This line, and this line. And they're all at that 3.4, whatever it is, 3.5, a little bit past the 3 angle. All of my verticals, of course, are parallel to each other. And then all of these lines are also parallel to each other. That's the nature of the Gothic alphabet, is these lines are all parallel to each other. Now let's go to the pen. And I've got a Speedball C1. And here's my guideline. That's my X height for this pen, about 5 nibs high, which means my S ender would be about there. First stroke, down to the header, vertical, stopping about 1/3 of the way up from the baseline, then a curve, then back up here, up to the header, angle, vertical, and angle, and then a little flag on the top. I'm going to do that one more time, and I'm going to add this time these, what I call hangnails, if you will, add just a little bit of a hook to each of your lowercase strokes, you'll get just a little bit more of a Gothic looking letter. So instead of starting my next stroke right at the end of that, I'm going to back up just a little tiny bit. Stop there, curve, coming down, back up here. And again, instead of starting my next stroke at the end of that line, I'm going to come in just a little bit. And then did you see me kick out? I went down, kick out just a tiny bit. And then this vertical stroke, and again, make this stroke overhang. So I don't know if you can see the difference between these two. Let me add the flag. There we go. So here's an acceptable, mildly sloppy letter B. One of the characteristics of my calligraphy corner is I want to show you not just my absolutely perfect letters. I've done that with the sample that I sent you on the website, but I want to show you that this is what it looks like when you're practicing. You're just getting started. But you see these little hooks here? This is what I'm calling a hangnail. That they're not as pronounced on this letter. That makes it look just a little bit more Gothic-ish, which is, of course, what you want when you're doing Gothic lettering. Way to go. Let's keep going.